Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of After the Peaks. I'm your host, Brian Quigley, and today we have an incredible guest joining us, Jose Alejandro. Jose is the founder of Intentional Impact, a program focusing on helping impact-driven men increase their impact and initiate the next evolution of their gift, vision, and leadership with intention and integrity. Jose is also the co-founder of Modern Renaissance Man, a community that empowers men to find their edge so they can live the life they want to live. Jose bridges his personal life experiences and hero's journey with his training in somatic experiencing, trauma-informed coaching, men's work, breath work, ancestral wisdom, and rites of passage to inspire men to own their story, release limiting beliefs, and embody their truth through mind, body, soul, and style. Jose is completely committed to his vision and willing to put in all the necessary effort and resources to achieve it. I'm truly honored to have Jose join us on After the Peaks. So without further ado, let's drop into the episode. Jose, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, and I appreciate the beautiful introduction. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time. And as with all my other guests, I like to start with a quote. Resistance is always proportionate to the dream. Act accordingly. Stephen Pressfield.
It's one of my favorite authors. Great way to start this.
Yeah, you talk about if you're going to call something in, you better be ready for the resistance that comes along with it. We talked a little bit about why people stop pursuing their dreams or give up halfway through.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. I definitely feel like giving up whenever I feel resistance. I'd be lying if I said I didn't. And I think our mind is literally programmed for us to move away from resistance. Right? It's like it's a defense mechanism. It's a coping mechanism for us to protect ourselves and be safe. Right? So I think most of us, as we start calling in a vision or even having that vision, the first form of resistance that comes after claiming a vision is realizing that we've got to now start working towards it, right? And that resistance alone often brings up thoughts of not feeling like enough, not thinking that we're ready, not thinking that it's possible because of some limitations that maybe are there or aren't there, and we project to the future. We could list a whole bunch of things, and it looks different for everybody, but ultimately we confuse resistance with a sign that we need to stop, right? And I always reflect on and try to tune into whether what I'm feeling is fear or misalignment, and oftentimes resistance is a reflection of fear, and oftentimes fear reveals where we need to head towards, right? Misalignment feels a little bit different. I think it's also a form of resistance, but it's kind of like it's not a byproduct of our vision. It's usually a byproduct of conditioning and what we think our vision should be, right? And usually we could feel like, I don't belong here, I shouldn't be doing this, or this isn't for me. Whereas resistance is kind of like, oh man, I don't know how to describe it. There's like this pull in that direction, but it feels like I have to do some work to break through a wall or to release baggage or weight that's holding me down from actually heading in the direction that I want to. So it's like a feeling layered above the inspiration that doesn't belong there, rather than a lack of inspiration um, with a layered desire for validation.
I love that. I love that. And you talk about the loops that we get in that we know what's happening, but we just continue to go through those loops. So what's your process in actually breaking through to create something new for yourself?
Yeah. Well, I think most personal development work, and it's great. It's a great place for all of us to start. It's where I started. I got my bachelor's in psychology, and really the reason I went into psych was because I was curious about the mind, but there was also a selfish desire to fix my household chaos and all the problems that were going on. So for me, it was like there was a top down approach of like, let me learn everything I can, gain all the information and theory that I can, so that way I can apply it into my life. And oftentimes that's where we get stuck. To be honest, I've recognized this in a lot. I've recognized this in myself and in a lot of men that I work with. Personal development and the beginning stages of that journey can actually create more anxiety and depression, because we become aware of the theories and the vision, and we give ourselves permission to vision. Some of us don't even give ourselves to get to the point where we can allow ourselves to see that vision. We get to that point, and immediately after, it's like, I see what's possible, and fuck, I don't know how to get there. Right. And there's sometimes this defeat, our old stories come up, and, the body keeps the score. A lot of my work is bottom up approach, where I actually believe that, yes, we can learn the information to shift our paradigm and explore possibility. But oftentimes we try to bridge the gap between where we are and where we're going by waiting for time to pass by, or by trying to gain more information. Where the truth is that sometimes you just got to take action, right? So for me, when I get caught in those loops, um, it's always helped me to just take action despite the resistance and the fear, and then create new evidence in my body of the opposite, that taking action is actually safer than staying the same. Right? I think oftentimes our mind believes that if we don't take action and we listen to the resistance, we'll be safe. And maybe till a certain point in our life, because of certain experiences we were having, that was true. But after a certain point, it actually becomes more unsafe to not live our truth and take that action. So for me, having coaches, men around me that help me realize that truth and realize that it's what I want to do and what feels inspiring to me, it almost it just makes it so much easier to take the action and then prove to myself, like, oh shit, I am confident because I did the thing. I didn't wait for the confidence or the confidence to come or the resistance to go away.
Mhm.
Huh.
I love that. And you talk about speak your truth no matter how much your voice cracks,
Yeah.
right? And that has sat with me for years from when you said it. And can you talk a little bit about what that means? Because you're big on truth. You're big on embodiment. You're big on speaking your truth, living with passion and purpose. Why is that so important in your work?
It's important in my work because it's important for me. Every time I reach my edge of expressing myself, my voice cracks in some way, either figuratively and I'll share an actual recent thing that I worked through is, I feel pretty confident speaking in front of a large group of men. I've been doing it for some time. My voice is definitely cracked whenever I'm at a new version of that. And recently, 2 years ago, I moved to Puerto Rico, and this year I started doing like full Spanish events. Right. So standing in front of men and speaking or giving context to my work and to the exercises that we're doing and all of that, all in Spanish, when it's language that, I've learned later half of my life in English, and now trying to translate it, there's been moments where my voice has cracked, and I noticed there's a part of me that surfaces and feels that sensation in my body that something might happen, or there's danger on the other side of me speaking my truth, which takes it a little bit further. It's not the occurring moment. These men, for example, it was for an immersion. These men invited me to lead them in that event. They invited me by saying yes, by answering the call, by deciding to lean in. Um, they weren't the issue, right? It was nothing about what they would do. It was nothing about the occurring moment. But for most of my life, I've negotiated my truth for the sake of preserving the peace, preserving relationships, preserving really love from my parents. There's so many times when I was a kid that I was a very opinionated kid. I was talking really early. I think my father says, like, in the first year it sounded like I was asking questions and I wasn't even saying words, right? And I used to get in a lot of trouble for asking questions that really had no they had no bad intentions. And I've had this conversation with my parents, and we've healed a lot around this. But at the time, they did their best, and they looked at it or saw it as a form of disrespect, especially my mom, right? So if I asked a question about something she shared, I genuinely was curious. It's like, well, why do we do that? Why do I have to do that? Right? It wasn't trying to disrespect. It was literally just trying to voice. Sometimes a question is the truth, is something that I've learned, right? So a truth is not always a definitive answer. We think that truth is, here's what I believe. Sometimes truth is, here's what I'm curious about. And when I was a kid, I was just curious, and I couldn't share my truth about what I was curious about because oftentimes I would get in trouble. That led to a defense mechanism and a pattern of me saying, well, if I share what I feel, I get in trouble. If I share what I feel, or sharing my truth equals chaos. Sharing my truth equals trouble. Sharing my truth equals not keeping the peace. And my parents arguing, my mom being upset with me, my father being upset that my mom was upset at him for being upset at me. It was a cycle, ultimately creating a pattern of negotiating my truth for the sake of preserving relationships, and for the sake of preserving the peace, and for the sake of preserving my safety and feeling safe in my own body. That led to teenage years. I remember I would be at the top of the stairs, and I would listen to my mom and my father talking, to just tune into the energy of the day, of the energy of the moment, before I came down and asked if I could go out or asked if I could hang out with my friends. And I would literally, if I felt like the energy was not positive, I would lock myself in my room. And that was me not even being willing to ask for permission and possibly receive a no, because I was afraid of what the outcome of asking would be. Right. So long story short, I mean, that took me through a journey of realizing that I was negotiating my vision for the sake of, because our vision is a part of our truth, my purpose. And that led me to just slowly, dismantling all these stories that I adopted from society, from my parents, from loved ones, stories that I reinforced about myself. For example, speaking my truth equals, all the things that I mentioned. And I think I'll land the plane here around this, that I think leadership starts with self-leadership, right? If we can't lead ourselves, we can't lead anyone. So it put me on a road of self-leadership. So how do I want to move? How do I want to live? How do I want to be in relationship? How do I want to be in relationship with myself, with others? How do I want to wake up in the mornings? That was like a whole journey for me. And naturally, it was centered around me being in my truth, not just speaking my truth. And naturally, I think the next stage after self-leadership for any of us is empowering others to do the same. It's like man, embodying my truth, living my vision, and being an impact-driven leader it feels like I'm in the right place, and I've created evidence that moving past resistance and doing those things makes me feel fulfilled in life. I want to empower others to do the same. So my work is literally just a reflection of all the pain and confusion that I went through, and still, those parts of me get activated and come up at every threshold, and those things turned into purpose. Turned into kind of like a, how can I share my story even without always going into the details, but just by showing up in leadership and empowering other men to also speak their truth, even if their voice cracks, because at some point it stops cracking and you start empowering others with your words.
I love that. And what comes to mind right now is beginner's mind, right? A kid has a beginner's mind because they are curious and they have a big heart, and there's not so much weight of, oh shit, if I do this, this is going to happen. And then all of a sudden we start molding to our parents, to our relationships, to our job, and then we're, middle age, and we've spent a whole entire lifetime not being curious or forgetting how to be curious. So, um, mind, body, soul, style, we're in the mind right now. And, you talk about like speaking the truth, no matter how much your voice cracks, and working through that crack. So there's iterations of Jose, right? And this didn't happen overnight. So to someone who is like stuck in that theory, right? Like they know they need to do something, but they don't know how to. How important is movement in what you bring to your communities through your messaging? I know that breathwork has been tremendous. I've seen you kind of manifest that over the last couple of years. I know it's a newer practice, and I just want to acknowledge you for doing that because you're so committed to doing that after MRM, after creating community. You're creating these other disciplines and bringing them in because that's a problem to some people that don't know how to move energy. If someone's telling them you're playing small, you're doing this, and or they're just showing up in these spaces and they're like, I'm here, but they don't know how to get into the body, have that release.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I love that you brought up breathwork. I when I first started on like my personal development journey beyond just like the information and started meditating, all this, I had some difficulty meditating. And I think that's the point, right? One thing when guys tell me, I can't meditate, too many thoughts are coming up. Like that's the meditation, it's being with the thoughts, right? But I didn't realize this now, but I'm a big advocate for breath work because I believe it's a precursor to meditation, precursor to mindfulness. Reality is that we are breathing before we get into a meditative state. We're always breathing, right? And we can't breathe. We can't go into a meditative state while we're hyperventilating, right? So just slowing the body down. There's research that shows that 6 deep breaths reset our nervous system, right? And if we think about all our emotions and feelings, you talked about the mind, and we were talking about stories and things that dangers that I project into different moments of my life or opportunities for me to move past resistance. The stories live in our mind, but the feelings and emotions live in our body, right? We often don't think about that. It's not something that we think about. It's like, yeah, I'm feeling anxious or I'm feeling sad, and here's why. And we think about the story. We think the emotion's living up in our mind, but the emotion, the feeling is living in our body, and these stories activate it. So whenever we're sad, happy, excited, joyful, grieving, literally think about any emotion or feeling, emotion. There's an associated feeling in our body, and then there's also a shift in our breath. There's a shift in our breath, and we can also flip that around and create a shift in our body, and then that goes on to creating a shift in our mind with our breath, because breath is really the only way to consciously and the best way to consciously shift our state of mind, of body, and of body. Obviously we can do a lot of different movements, but of mind, of body, and of emotion, right? So when we speak about movement beyond breath, because those emotions and feelings live in our body, uh, moving our body is sometimes the best way to shift our state. Beyond just breath. Sometimes we feel anxious and we feel like we have to power through it. I can't tell you how many times those moments of resistance, I felt anxiety, and I felt like I just had to wait it out. It's like, fuck, I'm anxious, right? And why am I anxious? And I just go into this fuck it tumble of trying to think about why I'm anxious, when literally now I feel like I'm anxious. I notice it. I try to see why, but then I just move my body. Literally just getting up, shaking my body can sometimes move that energy and anxiety out of our body. Breathing 60 breaths can move that energy and transmute it into a different feeling in our body. So movement, I think, is the really before before even body. I mean, before even mind. I think movement is and using our body is probably the best place to start. Like literally going to the gym or doing some walking, right? There's literally therapies that with walking and moving your eyes and thinking about a problem, you can literally dismantle traumatic experiences that are lodged in there, right? So just moving and feeling movement in our body can create a shift. And you know the next step for me was moving and uh, adding the thoughts that I wanted to start believing with that movement. Like, um, for example, cold plunging. That's not necessarily movement, but we're feeling that in our body. I remember the first time I did cold plunge. The person that was guiding me through the experience said, "Think about the thing that you're resisting the most. Think about the fear that the conversation, the question, the action that you don't want to take, right? And now go into this water, feel the sensation in your body, the feeling that you're at your edge and maybe your ego believes you're going to die, and reflect on yourself and who you want to be, who you need to be in order to face that resistance, take that action, have those conversations, ask those questions. And it's almost like this mind body connections formed, just like I can't do this because confidence lives in the mind, again, through story. Here's the evidence that I can look at, or the lack thereof. And the feeling of confidence, which is really what matters most, is who we're being and how we're presenting ourselves without words or without having to say, these are the things that I did. It's like I'm showing up to this conversation as, this is who I am. There's things that I've done, there's things that I don't. I don't have to say them all on this call or this podcast, but I feel the confidence in my body because there's a mind body connection created through that movement, combined with those new thoughts that are different than what I've been programmed or conditioned to believe.
I love it. And you make it sound so easy, but it's
It's
not
not.
easy. It's not easy. Like, oh, mind, body, soul, style. Like, so I just want to certainty is the enemy of growth. Mark Manson.
Mm.
He talked about allowing yourself the freedom to feel the mistakes. You just are. Allow yourself to be uncertain. So can you talk about faith?
Mm. Yeah, it's a great question. Faith, trust, belief. A big, you mentioned mind, body, soul. Soul for me means truth. It's the unchanging part of us. It's the part of us before any stories, before any beliefs, before any identities of this is who I am, what I do, the work that I've done, etc. It's like our soul, our truth is the unchanging part of us. It's our purpose. I think ultimately our purpose is the purpose is the same for all of us. I believe it's to find, reconnect, and reveal our deepest truth, our most authentic self. And if I was born 100 years from now, my truth would be the same. My purpose would still be that, but my mission will look different because it's reflective of what is available around me and the environment that I'm in. So when I think of faith, when you ask me that question, I think of those moments when going back to alignment and versus fear, misalignment versus fear, when I feel so aligned that I know that as long as I follow this feeling of feeling alive, not the feeling of external validation, not the feeling of being safe and staying safe, not the feeling of all these external things that we're told are measures of success, but the feeling of like, I feel alive right now, and I know if I continue to follow this, I can trust and have faith that I will be okay. Right? If I follow this, since this is unchanging, I know that there's an opportunity to create abundance from this. There's an opportunity to be of service from this. There's an opportunity for me to uh, continue to receive, because this part of me that's unchanging is limitless, right? And there's a faith in that. And then for me, there's also the faith of there's something greater than me that's working through me, right? And whether that's because I've had an interesting relationship with religion when I was younger, raised Catholic and Christian, and then I distanced myself from religion, and I had to really find myself back to learning and feeling what spirituality meant for me, and understanding that there's something greater than me, that is being revealed through me and through the work that I do. Once I really leaned into exploring what that meant for me, there's just moments that I can't describe, moments that I felt where it was like, you're just testimony, you're on the right path. I'm on the right path. And whatever I do, as long as I follow my truth, that truth, because it's unchanging, there's a source that it's coming from, right? Whether it's God, creator, spirit, earth, for me, the name doesn't matter. For me, it's just knowing that there's something that's working beyond my comprehension, and that allows me to surrender and trust. I tend to use universe as the word for most of the time when I'm speaking about it. It's like you say, when you ask the universe for something, you better be ready for, to receive it. And for me, there's a concept of giving the universe conflicting requests, right? It's like, yeah, I want this. I want to be, a leader who empowers a generation of men to um, show up in a relationship with an open heart. Great. And then there's opportunities for you to show up, and those opportunities is the resistance. If you're really committed to that, are you willing to sacrifice the fear of fill in the blank for the sake of creating that vision, and having faith that uh, that you will be guided and supported throughout that journey, rather than giving a conflicting request? So you make that request, here's my vision, I'm declaring it, and not trusting that when the opportunities for you to lean into that mission, that purpose, reveal themselves, that you will be okay. Right? It's conflicting, and it's a lack of faith. Right? It's like um, allowing ourselves to only take steps when we could see what's right in front of us, or we could see what's behind the door. Right? And it also goes into intuition. Right? This is two doors. Right? And you can't see what's behind either, but you have to make a choice. And one of them has a title that is reflective of everything that has made you feel alive in your life. And one of them has a title that is reflective of all the times you gave into resistance. You don't know what's behind them. What choice are you going to make? Right? And you have to make a choice. So faith is going with a choice that the best bet is going with what makes me feel alive. And I don't know what's behind these doors, but I know if I choose resistance, I actually am moving away from life. Like literally, we are dying every time we choose not to live. What's the opposite of life? It's death, right? So choosing to feel alive, that's the ultimate form of trust and faith, not only in yourself, but in everything that is is being uh, just channeled or provided through you.
I love that. And I think about theory and how much, again, we're in the mind. We're stuck in the mind. We can't get into the body because we're familiar with the patterns and the resistance and, the story that plays out again. So, yeah, it's just having that faith and breaking through is easier said than done when what is the easy road or roads is there before you. I know I felt most alive when I did things that I was scared of, because you can't reflect unless you're actually doing those things. You can't reflect in theory ever, right? But if I try and if I fail forward, I have that feeling, that happening, that the witnessing of people seeing me try. There's so much richness and just makes you feel alive, like you said. So I think you can't do that in theory, and we need to get past the mind and to get past the story that we tell ourselves.
Yeah, I love that. I saw something today on Threads. It was a photo of it was these books. They were green. They were red, yellow, green, and there were different size stacks of books. And the first one was, excuse me, red, and it was three books, and it said theory on it. And then in the middle, it said it was maybe like twice the amount of books, and it said practice. And the third stack was like five times the amount of books, and it said failure, right? And failing, like you just mentioned, being witnessed trying, being witnessed in failure. Some I think the biggest fear most men have is, and I've seen in just like witnessing men resist leaning into a community of other men who are also like committed to creating the life they love and the life they want to live and leave nothing on the table. And also while they're in it, including myself, is the fear of being seen trying. Right? Everybody wants to, the peak. Everyone wants to show the photo of the peak. No one wants to show or talk about the journey up the peak and how they twisted their ankle and all the things that are happening. And even less want to be witnessed in it, because when we're sharing the story, it's great. Yeah, I twisted my ankle. You can kind of not shape it. Even when you're being honest, you can kind of talk about it in a way that is connected to the peak. But being witnessed in the trying, that's like another level. One is sharing the peak, the other is sharing the journey, and then the other is being witnessed in the journey. Like witnessed in trying, witnessed in failing. It's something that requires a lot of vulnerability, and a lot of vulnerability equals courage, but really it requires uh, us to, goes back to what you said, like the art of sucking at something, like realizing that that's the best art of all. It's like being in that curiosity state where you're stumbling and crawling and haven't yet like fully embodied a posture of confidence in that place. Because when we do that around other individuals, we can receive feedback, we can receive insight, we can receive support, empowerment. Someone can grab you and pull you up, someone can push you from below, and also you get to do the same. Because guess what? While you're on that journey, someone's next to you on the same journey. And whether they've done it or not, maybe one person has, one person hasn't. It's also a gift for you to bring people along the journey, because you get to show them where I just picture a hike when you're in the front and you're like, watch out for that. The guy in the front is always like, watch out for this branch, watch out for that. It's the smallest thing, but it goes such a long way. Right? And we try to skip all that. It's like, I don't want to be seen in it. So we rather literally uh, live a life, and it's just our ego. I don't say we actually rather live a life without regrets, where we're fully embodying our truth. We all do. It's just it's what we're here to be. And I think our ego rather extend extend and prolong the feeling of fear, resistance, and just being in the same state, rather than being seen trying in failure. And that also takes practice. And it takes practice and safe containers to do so as well. Because the truth is that a lot of the reason why we avoid failing or being seen failing is because maybe there were spaces that we were in our early childhood where we didn't feel safe doing so, and we learned to not do so in order to no longer feel unsafe. So definitely finding safe spaces where we're not hiking with people who are hooking our ankles or kicking our Achilles as we are going up the peak. or reaching the peak, but actually like supporting us and empowering us along the way without judging us when we do hit twist our ankle.
Yeah, I love these spaces. I've been in men's work with Rising Man for almost 3 years. I've been in multiple containers, Inferno, Compass, Dojo, and just the iterations of that. When you go into a new container with men, we are just kind of trained not to be emotional. So when I'm in a space with someone like yourself who's been doing men's work, who says, "Why aren't you showing emotion?" I don't fucking know. You know what I mean? So it's like the trust and the weeks that would go by, during the pandemic virtually, where we're actually dropping into spaces, sharing stories where we're so alike, right? We're not different. We're very like, I'm a child of divorce, so I know what it's like to grow up with a single mom. I know what it's not like to have a father figure, and but to break through that with men who have broken those generational traumas, who have actually reworked their relationship with their father, and now they're in an amazing relationship with their father, like I am right now. So that's work that doesn't happen overnight. So I just wanted to acknowledge you for what you're doing with Modern Renaissance Men, because it's creating a massive impact out there.
I appreciate that, man, and it is it is it's hard work, but it gets to be, it's not easy, but it gets to be done with ease. I think one thing for me, as I hear you say that, it just resonates so much because so much of my work last year with my coach was around, like just being at the stage that I'm at and just enjoying it. I have a gift that I honor and appreciate, and I see in you as well, that has allowed me to get to this point in my life where I have been hungry for information, for growth, for transformation. I put myself, everywhere from difficult conversations to, fucking Amazon rainforest, right? And it's given me so much insight, but oftentimes it's also, there's a shadow aspect to it, and I don't know if you resonate with this, but there's times where I'm always looking for the gap. I'm always looking for where my voice is still cracking and I can improve it. And there's beauty and bliss in being with the just where we're at in the moment too, not getting stagnant, comfortable. There's a difference there, right? Uh, there's a difference between just like staying put and deteriorating and waiting for our life to end, but there's times where being with the mundane, being with the discomfort, being with the just joy of like, yeah, there's ways that I could be a better partner in my relationship, and I'm working on those. And there's times where I got so caught up with those that I wasn't enjoying the date I was in with who I am and everything I am in this moment. So really just reflecting on, it's not easy. It's a long journey, and there's the word that comes up is compassion, grace, right? That's a big piece to being, for me, to being, uh, feeling like I'm living the life that I love, right? Just knowing that I can enjoy every stage of it. And then, like, this, we've both done our rite of passage, and chop wood, carry water, right? This is before alignment, chop wood, carry water. After alignment, guess what? You still got to chop wood, carry water, and I'll add dig up a latrine, right? So
Yeah.
it
No.
doesn't change whether or not uh, grow, and that's something that we definitely try to weave into MRM. It's just um, a lot of the men in our container are self-led and hungry. Most of them are between the ages of 28 and 40. And maybe, we say 28 because we kind of speak, and our messaging is tailored towards guys that already like wake up in the mornings self-motivated, and they've put in some work in their 20s where they feel like they've accomplished some things, but there's still a gap there around creating the life they love and being fully in their truth and in their power. And we'll, just there's a big component there, just letting them know, like, this, you get to enjoy it, this work, you get to enjoy this process. Grief comes with growth, and I think we often forget that. But there's beauty after grief. There's moments where we can't just like, fuck, what's next? When's the next retreat? When's the next plant medicine journey? I got to do another rite of passage, even though I did one last year, because this year I'm feeling this resistance. Like, no, be with the resistance and see what you can already embody based on what you know. Which is why uh, I often give myself years, months, or weeks where I stop consuming information. Last year, I did a lot of coaching, a lot of programs, a lot of retreats, and I committed to this year taking some space so that I can implement, integrate, and embody everything that I've learned. Right? I remember I used to read books, like one book, two books every month. And then there was a year with my shadow work coach, you know him well, Rainier. Shout out to Rainier. He told me, can you recite the last thing that, the one thing from the book you read 3 books ago? And I was like, fuck, I forgot. And I realized that I wasn't actually allowing myself to enjoy what I learned from the first book, or take my time reading it a little bit longer, or give myself space to be in the mistakes and the failures of implementing the shit that I learned. So I think it all ties back into being with the failures. It's like being with the failures and having some fun, laughing at it, rather than beating yourself up and saying, fuck, I'm not where I need to be.
Right. And I think the best work is done in the valleys, right? Like after the peak, you're just hiking through for miles and miles and miles, and you're like, this is boring, right? But it's like you're actually elevating over time. You don't see it, but through repetition, doing the work, it's like working on a relationship when it's at its worst, right? It's like in these valleys, right, where there's no threat. This is where we're diving in. This is where we're like re, committing to each other, to the work, to each other. Um, so it's just, and in relationship, I just wanted to acknowledge you for being in relationship for 14 years now to your fiance Sam, which
Yeah.
you talk about her as being like an inspiration to you and a North Star. Like, how many iterations of Jose were in that relationship where you're just kind of going up against all your resistances, but you're failing forward. You can't fail
Yeah.
forward in theory, right? You can't fail
Yeah.
forward in theory. So
Yeah.
thanks for being an inspiration to us single guys out there.
Hey, man, it's not perfect. And when you ask about iterations, there's at least been 5 evolutions of our relationship. And right now we're at a threshold stepping into our next. And it's beautiful, just the amount of tools that we have, the patience and communication like, just ability to communicate that we've cultivated, that allows for these thresholds to be navigated with an open heart and with compassion, with love. But it's been at least 5 iterations, and with each one, there's a death. Meaning there's like a death of the old things that maybe were literally what made the relationship as beautiful as it was at that stage, now get to be let go of, because there's something that's more beautiful, and it feels so comfortable to cling on to it, because it's like, oh man, I used to love when she did this, or love how we did this, or love how I felt when we, all these different thoughts. And it's like, yeah, but your vision for this relationship, our vision for this relationship, is much greater than that. And we're changing, we're evolving as individuals, so that's no longer in alignment. And with that comes the fear of like, is it going to be the same? No, it's not going to be the same, right? And that means that it might not, that sometimes means facing off with breaking up for the sake of love, right? And oftentimes we don't think about that. We think love means forcing ourselves to stay together. Love is not a relationship. Love is revealed and reflected in relationship. right? So we try to hold on to love by holding on to a person, but really the truth is sometimes breaking up is for the sake of love, for the sake of the love we have for that person, but for the sake of just love we have for ourselves, and even greater than that, love period, right? So for the 14 years, we made 14 years in February. What we're seeing right now is it's interesting, and I'm navigating this at the moment. Um, my partner is asking of more vulnerability and depth from me, right? And there's the ego that and this is not the first time. At every stage she asks for that, because she's growing, she's expressing herself, she is just expressing more energy, and I love it. It's what I'm calling in, right? And with that, there's my ego goes, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, oh, I am emotionally available. I've done all this work, and I just like, it's like I'm listening to things in my mind. My ego's listening to things, and it's like, no, but you're capable of holding and being with more. And just because you are above average on this with your standard at this stage doesn't mean that this is where you stop short. Because this is, if you stop short, then you're not empowering other men to also reach that stage. So when I say above average in being able to express or be emotionally available with my partner, I'm not saying that I am better than or more superior to any man. I mean, I've been on this journey of opening my heart and having the capacity to be with a lot of energy in my business, and holding a lot of space for a lot of men, and also creating and saving an abundant amount of space for my partner. And any man could do that. So how dare I stop short? If I'm calling this in, and my partner is revealing that she's craving more of me, it's just a reflection and a gift. She's giving me a gift where I get to say, my checklist is, okay, if my partner's asking me of something, first go through my values. Second, acknowledge the trigger if there is one, and put it aside. Let's ask ourselves this. Once we go through our values, this is align with my values. Yes, this is inspire me, all the things. Yeah, my growth and evolution, all my values. And then I ask myself, is what she's asking of me something I'm asking of myself, or something I'm craving of myself? So regardless of how triggered I am, is it something that I'm actually craving in my life? And if I do cultivate this, what is the result beyond my relationship, beyond what it opens up? And if all that adds up, and it's like, yeah, that's actually something I want, even if my ego, sometimes as men, I used to do this. It's like, it's actually the thing I want. So often I see men call something in, again, going back to conflicting requests, we call something in our relationship. We want more sex. We want our partner to be more open. We want our partner to reveal their heart to us. We want our partner to be XYZ, fill in the blank, all these things. Our business, same thing. We want this, we want that, we want that. And then it starts arriving, and we close up. And even if it's the thing we want, our ego's like, no. Well, my partner asked me for it, so fuck that. I'm not doing it. I just want to stay with the identity that I have. So it's interesting because it shows up for me all the time. Relationship, like, bro, you called this in. Are you going to allow fear to hold you back from embracing it and being with it and feeling alive at that level, just because you felt alive at this previous level? That is like a lobster shell. Lobsters have to, at some point, they reach the capacity, and the shell starts to constrain them and suffocate them, and they have to go into another shell. But guess what? Most vulnerable moment is between the first and the second shell, because you have no shell, and anybody might come and snatch you up. Right? There's a fear around the shift. So yeah, maybe the first shell was comfortable. I felt good in that suit, where I was at in my relationship, but I've outgrown it. And I could either choose to suffocate myself at this stage of the relationship, which at some point was beautiful, or I could decide to be a little bit more vulnerable and step into that next suit, um, which I've called in and been craving in my life.
You say called in, and I know you're very much into like ancestral wisdom and spirit animals. Your spirit animal is the red-tailed hawk. I'd love to know that story of how the red-tailed hawk came to you, when it came to you. Um, yeah, I'm very curious to know.
Yeah. Um, so I'll start off by saying that the red tail hawk for me represents my late grandfather, who died, I believe, when I was 3. And a lot. My thoughts about him, my feelings towards him, it was like it was indifferent for some time, and then there was times in my life there was also negative, and the reason for that was because a lot of my father's family, excluding my father, because he really opened his heart and healed that relationship. You know, he was like the epitome of like toxic masculinity, right? And really a a hurt individual who hurt a lot of people in his life. And um, I my relationship with him was always like that. And I remember, there's a lot of stories, but this is the biggest one. I remember I was in Guatemala with some Mayan elders for a week, and we did a lot of temazcals and fire ceremonies and all. It was really beautiful just to witness, and a lot of healing came from that. I remember I was in the temazcal for a really long time. It was really powerful. A lot of stuff surfaced for me, and when I came out, they wrap you up in a towel and lay you down. And it's almost like a psychedelic experience because you're just sweating and so hot, and um, it peels back. The veil gets thinner. And I remember one of the Tata said, and he had already knew some of the story, but I hadn't told him of my grandfather. He said, you know, I know you're a leader of men, but you can't fully embody your leadership and lead men to their hearts unless you embrace to their power, their truth, their hearts, unless you embrace all aspects of of your masculinity and uh, how it's been expressed in your family, right? And he went a little bit deeper. He said, "There's a grandfather here who's saying that who's saying that he loves you, and he wants you to know that uh, he recognizes and sees you heal. He sees himself healing through you." Here's what I got out of it. So I'm gonna put it into. I'm gonna use a movie to give an analogy. The last Star Wars. The last one. Obviously, there were new ones created, but the ones that came out in the '70s, I forgot. New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and then or vice versa. There was the scene where Darth Vader, he Anakin originally, and if you see the new version now on Disney, they changed the character. There's a scene where the Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Anakin are all they're all deceased, but their spirit is kind of looking over Luke, right? And all those 3 movies, Darth Vader was evil, was bad. Everyone spoke about him as this evil force, and after he passed, his purest, most authentic truth was revealed, and that was before he quote unquote turned to the dark side, right? So my relationship with my grandfather evolved in that way, where it was like, wow, I need to accept all the ways that all the ways that he showed up and did hurt people, see how those parts maybe live within myself, honor those parts by acknowledging them, and then also deciding that they're not they're not how I want to live my life. I need to do that in order to uh, you know really embody the full power and the beauty of my masculinity. So you asked me about spirit and just like ancestral wisdom and the red-tailed hawk. So that's one example of just like while I was in the Temazcal, red-tailed hawk had visited me. I wasn't yet aware. I was having some visuals in there. I wasn't yet aware that it was my grandfather. Another time, rite of passage, I followed a red-tailed hawk that was just flying in circles up to my spot. So I actually found my fasting spot by following a red-tailed hawk until it stopped and just circled above this one spot over and over and over again. And then I laid my hammock there, and I remember it made a turn, went around the trees. I thought it had left, and then literally right in front of me, just like uh, swept right in front of me because I was on a peak. And that was like a moment of like, here's where I'm meant to be. So there's been a lot of moments, but the first moment where I had an experience with the hog and I felt like something was coming through was in a plant medicine journey. So it was during an ayahuasca journey, and I saw my family lineage, and it was both mom and dad side, great grandfather yelling and like kind of like projecting things onto my grandparents, and then my parents, and then me. And I remember I just turned around and put my hand up like stop, almost like it stops with me. And that was the first time I had that experience. I felt like right after I saw this hawk just uh, come up to me and like land on my chest. And since then, I just embraced it. I think there's also the fun part of like hawk vision, and just I love working with vision and supporting men and living their vision. So I've kind of embraced that identity of the hawk, but I'm also not attached to it either. It's just been a big part of my spiritual journey and my relationship with my grandfather.
I love it. And your relationship with your father, I know that has really improved over the years through a couple of divorces with your parents, and you and your dad are just so alike and connecting.
Yeah, yeah. Well, shout out to pops. Jose Jose Rodriguez, another Jose. Um, yeah, so my parents married and divorced each other. So the two of them, um, three times. The third time was when I moved out of my house and in with my now fiance. 4 months after, they were like, "There's no point in us being together anymore. Peace." Right, and it was like I knew it was gonna happen, but when it did happen, a lot came up for me around like there was I felt guilty, like there was times where my father would say, "I'm here for you," and even though that was beautiful, I think he had all the best intentions, and we've spoken about this. Uh, it made me feel like the only reason they were together was because of me, and all the chaos and all the things were like my fault, and all the dreams that he said he didn't go after. And so I think most of my 20s I was running away from becoming the becoming my idea of who he was. Like I gotta live my life. I gotta rebel against everything. I gotta uh, say what I'm gonna do, even at the expense of my rest, of my like of everything, because I'm not going to live the life that you know my father lived, quote unquote. That's how I interpreted it. And it reached a point. I think the biggest, it was maybe a conversation 3 years ago where we sat down and I told him what I didn't appreciate, and I told him what I did appreciate. And this was after a conversation with one of my coaches that said, I think the conversation was about 4 or 5 years ago, but then I actually had a conversation with my father that went deeper than the first one after the conversation with my coach. But they told me, well, how would you treat your father, and how would you what would your relationship with your father be if you took out the title father? Right? And all the expectations that come with it, the societal expectations that you've adopted, the expectations based on comparing to other fathers that maybe you experience, other men that you've connected or met who are role models or mentors. And I was like, man, he's just a man who also has his own journey, has his own experiences that maybe limited him, but also allowed him to show up for me the way that he did. And I can be a little bit more compassionate with him. So that opened up an opportunity for me to look at him as a human, and appreciate all the things about him that I was also casting away, and like patience, like commitment, like honesty, integrity, all the things that are core pillars of who I am today that I wasn't allowing myself to fully embody because I wasn't embracing beyond his flaws. And also, embracing his flaws because they become a roadmap for how I navigate my life and the things to do differently. So my relationship with my father has really evolved. I led him through breath work last year, which is powerful. So that was
Awesome.
incredible. Yeah, leading my father through breath work and just being able to hold space for him in a way that he's held for me, although different. It was like that was a gift back to him, which I've also done with my mom, and leading them through breath work. Just for the sake of context, those listening, the breath work that I led them through was like a transformative, holotropic style breath work that really reveals a lot of stuck energy, emotions, and it's a really powerful healing experience. And being able to hold that for them and be that pillar for them where they felt safe enough to surrender and be in their experience and offer that to me as a gift without feeling like they have to do it because they're the parent. Man, it I think as men we often live our lives looking over our shoulder for our dad's approval and our mom's permission or vice versa. And doing that was kind of like another break in the generational, you know, trauma. It was a break in the uh, in the needing of permission or approval and just being my own man. And I'm not saying that every man does it that way, but just the conversation alone did that. It's kind of like that. Here's what I appreciate. Here's what I don't. And the reason I could share that is because I'm becoming my own man. So whether you agree with me or not, this is me as I am. Thank you for the pieces I took, and thank you for the pieces I don't, because they revealed who I don't want to be. With that, I love you. It's just the breath work took it to an emotional level where no words were shared. And it was kind of like, Dad, I see you. Parts that are coming up for you are beautiful, and you get to release them because I'm not taking them with me either. And the parts that are full of joy, what a beauty. Thank you. Like, I want that. And there was like an embracing of that. So, yeah, great question, man. I think father relationship, and I thought I had healed some stuff. Like I said, when I got my bachelor's in psych 10 years ago, 12 years ago, um, with my parents because I understood them. It's a whole another level to like um, show up to family dinners where there still might be shit that triggers you. Show up to conversations where there still might be shit that comes up. Um, be with them in conversation, even when your voice cracks, because you understand that they might be wrong, but it's easy to understand they might be wrong and not show up to the conversation. It's a whole nother thing to know that they might be wrong and show up to the conversation with an honest and with honesty and empathy. That's been the journey that I think I'm still on and will continue to be on, and hopefully, uh, you know, we can get to a point that our parents will always reach the end of their life. My grandparents are getting older as well, and hopefully at the end of their lives I could say I I put it all, like my heart, on the table and had the best, most beautiful relationship I could possibly have with them. um, Even if I get hit by a car tomorrow, God forbid, life could end today, just reflecting like, yeah, I gave it all I got to heal that relationship with both of them.
Beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. And what comes up for me is when you say he's just a man, drop the titles. And when I did that with my father, our relationship just started to blossom. After my mom passed in 2019, me and him have been side by side ever since, talking on the phone every day. And he's about ready to retire. I just got back from New York from my brother's wedding, and it's the first time my brothers, my father, worked together in space in probably over 20 years. So it's interesting when you drop the story and you just lean in, and you realize that they were just doing the best that they could do at that time when they were a kid themselves, and yeah, this all ends, right? So before it gets too late, just reach out, call your dad today if you haven't, right? Like reach out, take that leap, speak your truth, even if your voice is cracking. So beautiful conversation, Jose. And I know I could just sit here for hours and talk to you.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, can you let our listeners know, is there any social media handles, any offerings, and anywhere people can find you to learn more about you, MRM, and what you
Yeah.
got going on?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, thank you for having me, and I really just felt it was a great conversation. Like you said, we can go on different tangents and continue for days. With regards to where to find me, learn more about my work, Instagram, just R Jose underscore Alejandro. And there you could, I've been in the past 24 hours, been getting active on Threads. So just sharing all my thoughts on there. Um, and my link in bio is there. Access to my website. You can learn more about my one-on-one work. I specifically work with impact-driven leaders that want to embody their truth, live their vision, and be of service to the world. We do have, our version of Rite of Passage out in the East Coast as well, which with the beautiful support of Rising Man. So the next one's coming up in September. But the Severance Journey, which is really the preparation for the Wilderness Fast, starts end of July. So I don't know if this will come out by then, but we have them every May and September, spring and fall. And if there is, desire to really create a threshold that marks the transition from one stage of your life to the next, you can go to mrmthreshold.com and check that out. And yeah, besides that, everything, everything else, just flow through it and see what resonates through my content, and that'll lead you to the place. The last piece is MR Brotherhood. So MR Brotherhood, you'll also find link in there. Is really a space for self-led men committed to mastering themselves and creating the life they love. Something I co-created with my best friend and co-founder Voy, and it's a beautiful space to explore coaching, explore men's work, explore having authentic conversations and building intimate relationships with other men who are also creating the life they love and committed to being the best men they could be for themselves, their community, and the world. So with that, yeah, it was an honor, man. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And until next time, keep spreading positivity, making a difference, and embracing the extraordinary in your own lives. Take care, and we'll catch you on the next episode of After the Peaks. Thanks, man.